No, it's not. It's not. Like I was supposed to be Turkey. Like I was supposed to be it's an African very small, but it's a special. It's a very tiny country. Not exactly. Some place is part of the country.
Hello? Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Portugal, Madame Paula Leal da Silva, the Faculty of Electrical Engineering Computing, Dean Professor Gordon Gleditz, distinguished speakers and panelists, ladies and gentlemen, welcome everyone to the Robotics and AI in Society, Impacts and Questions Raised event. I'm Dr. Fausto Ferreira. I'm a senior researcher here at FER, and I'll be your host today. This event is co-organized by FER and the Embassy of Portugal in Zagreb, and is being held in the context of the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union. We have a very diverse program with speakers both from Croatia and Portugal, and I think we'll have a really exciting discussion. So without further ado, I'd like now to invite FER's Dean, Professor Gledec, to welcome us.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador, Your Excellencies who are watching us online, dear guests, dear colleagues, dear friends. Welcome to Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Computing of the University of Zagreb at the event that we co-organize with the Embassy of Portugal in the context of European presidency or the Council of the European Union. Croatia presided this council exactly a year ago. In the first 6 months of 2020, we had great plans to be part of the activities that are to be held to mark the Croatian presidency, but then Corona pandemic spoiled it all, so we had to give a lot of our planned activities up. However, we did have one opportunity to present our research at this place, in this setup, when the Croatian president came here in the celebration of Europe's Day on May 9th last year. We had similar panel discussion with distinguished scientists from European Union. And all of them joined us just like today online. However, I'm still happy that a lot of us are here. It looks like we are slowly returning to our normal life where we can see each other and talk to each other and not stare at the cold eye of the camera. Now at this moment, I'm pretty happy that we are part of this event and we are able to participate in one of Portuguese priorities during the presidency of the Council of the European Union, and that's fostering European recovery leveraged by the climate and digital transitions. Since we have members of diplomatic corps here and Madam Ambassador, and this is organized by Embassy, I'd like to use terminology from diplomacy and say that we have a lot of academic diplomats here at the faculty, our researchers and our professors, both Croatian and coming from abroad, like Fausto, who work closely with their colleagues in the European Union, but also around the world. This faculty is the strongest faculty in Croatia when it comes to taking money from European Union. 10% of all the money that comes to Croatia from Horizon 2020, for example, comes to this faculty. It's not much. Croatia receives around 125 million euros, but 10%, a little bit more, comes here. So far, we had 32 Horizon 2020 projects. Right now, we have 250 projects running at this faculty. One quarter is international projects, and out of them, 80% are with our partners in the European Union. For example, with Portugal, we currently have 11 ongoing projects out of 52 held so far. Slovenia will become the next president, will assume the presidency in July. We have a bit more projects in Slovenia, 16 projects, but they are closer. So I'd say it's normal and expected. So our research potential is definitely the basis for our education, and we try to educate our students in all the fields that are covered by this faculty. We have more than 3,500 students in all levels, undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate levels at this faculty. And in the autumn, we will start our international studies, especially in the fields of robotics and data science, as on our international studies, which will be held in English. So I'm sure you will hear a bit more about our achievements in the fields of robotics and artificial intelligence. We have here two panelists, Professor Bogdan and Professor Bracanovic, who hold a course at this faculty in ethics in new technologies. So it's a special course for our students who are not only need to know technical stuff, but also need to know a little broader, have a little broader perspective of artificial intelligence and robotics. So thank you once again for organizing this event. Please enjoy your stay at FER. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I would like to invite now Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Portugal, Madam Paula Leal da Silva, to welcome us as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dean, Your Excellencies, dear professors and students. I would like to start by expressing my sincere gratitude to your prestigious faculty, Mr. Dean, Mr. Vice Dean, and Professor Dr. Fausto Ferreira, for hosting and organizing the present event. A word of appreciation also goes to the professors and panelists who kindly accepted to contribute to this conference. For myself, as a non-expert, it will be a privilege indeed to listen to you and to learn through your vast and invaluable knowledge and proficiency about the fascinating subject of the fourth revolution. Likewise, my special gratitude goes to Professor Dr. Pedro Lima, who kindly agreed to participate from Portugal. Boa tarde, Sr. Professor. Muito obrigada por estar connosco. The Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union attaches high importance to the digital agenda as a determinant means to overcome the present crisis and to the recovery of our economies. We believe that Europe has to be in the front line, becoming an example to the world through the achievement of digital sovereignty. For such a strategic purpose to be attained, our continent needs a clear, resourceful, and efficient strategy. So the European Commission has already presented, among other initiatives, the Digital Services Package, the Data Governance Act, and e-privacy, as well as the revision of the RSI Directive. Additionally, the Commission also introduced last April another very relevant proposal on the European approach to artificial intelligence, following its white paper on the subject. Along the same lines, this presidency promoted the Digital Day on 19th of March, when 3 relevant declarations were signed: European Data Gateways, EU Startup Nations Standard of Excellence, and Green and Digital Transformation of the EU. Moreover, Portugal is hosting the High Ministerial Conference in Lisbon on the 1st and 2nd of June, where we intend to adopt the Lisbon Declaration on the theme Digital Democracy with a Purpose, focusing on digital rights and the human dimension of the digital ecosystem. The said conference will occur in connection with the formal inauguration of the highly emblematic Ela-Link submarine cable linking Europe to Latin America. On the European side, the cable will be moored in Sines, Portugal. Ladies and gentlemen, the digital transition, as a relevant and ambitious revolution for the future, should not disconcert the economic agents and the public opinions. On the contrary, we need to clearly elucidate the European citizens that such a transition offers opportunities, benefits, and positive outcomes to our economies. But for that to happen, it is paramount to safeguard fairness and justness, not leaving anyone behind. Consequently, the excellent results of Porto Social Summit demonstrated that the European governments are committed to make the whole digital transition process just and human-centric. To conclude, allow me to quote Albert Einstein. "Concern for man and his fate must always form the chief interest of all technical endeavors. Never forget this in the midst of your diagrams and equations." Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. We'll now start the program with 2 short talks followed by a roundtable. Please, all the questions for the speakers should be addressed during the roundtable, so take note and hold until then. The first speaker comes from the Instituto Superior Técnico, University of Lisbon, Portugal. Professor Pedro Lima is joining us online. It's my great pleasure to introduce him. I have known him for too many years. I don't want even to say how many.
Too many.
And exactly. he will be speaking about the positive impacts of robotics and AI in society. If you want to start sharing your screen, I'll just give some bio details while you set up. He received his PhD in electrical engineering from the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, New York, USA. He's now a full professor at IST in Lisbon and a researcher of the Institute for Systems and Robotics, where he is the deputy president for scientific matters. He's also a trustee of the RoboCup Federation. He was a president and founding member of the Portuguese Robotics Society, and he's very active on the promotion of science and technology in Europe and Portugal, of course. We should be able to see now, yeah. Whenever you want, please.
Do you? Can you see? Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to salute everyone present, Madam Ambassador, the Dean, Vice Dean, my fellow speaker, the panelists. Thanks so much for this invitation. Particular thank to Fausto, that, as he said, we know each other for a long time, and for suggesting me. So I have a lot of pleasure to talk about these things. I'm sorry I'm not using the full screen mode, because there's usually some problem. We rehearsed this before with Microsoft Teams, so I prefer to play on the safe side. It's almost the same. But I will talk about positive impacts of robotics and AI on society, as Fausto said. And it's a topic that I like to talk about for some time, because as it was very rightfully so mentioned before, for instance, by Madam Ambassador, we need to take into account the impact of our work on AI and robotics, in my particular case, more on robotics involved with AI, on society. We cannot just develop the technology and ignore its impacts. But I would like today to bring a positive message. I mean, for sure, there are things we can consider that may bring troubles, and we have to be careful about them. We may even discuss that during the panel. But today, I mostly wanted to show you the positive impacts of robotics and AI on society. And it really, can you see the next slide, just to make sure I won't ask this anymore, but just, okay. So it is true that the fears from technology are timeless, and whenever a new technology, which is more or less disruptive, enters into the picture, people usually find problems with it. And this example I used to bring because, I mean, for sure, I did not appreciate it at the time, but when trains were introduced, people had a lot of fears that they could cause troubles. In this particular case, instant insanity. And I even used to say that, for instance, for planes, maybe the level of accelerations we are subject to inside, maybe it's true, we get some physical troubles because of that. But I mean, the impact is so small compared with all the other advantages that trains and planes and whatsoever brought, that today we consider that this was a great advance and not a problem. And the same goes for many other technologies, and in particular for AI and for robotics. I just like usually to say that, however, there are some differences, and we should always also keep an eye on that, because usually that's not so clear, especially when we talk about it, when the press and the media talk about it. We have seen a lot of non-robotic systems, more or less artificially intelligent, that make a difference from robots because they are not supported on a physical body. And that makes a lot of difference on the impact. In fact, the first big difference is that they are already out there. They already replaced work in offices. I mean, not so many people go anymore to the bank teller or to the travel agent, because you can do a lot of things online with good suggestions of the programs and so on. While you also had that experience for industrial robots a long time ago, and in fact, in the end, it was a good experience. There were troubles with the replacement of jobs, but then more jobs were created because of the increase of productivity, richness, and so on. And the robots that we are talking about now, when we talk about intelligent robots, which are not just the bots that sometimes people talk when they are referring to virtual AI, are service robots that can help us at home, in hospitals, in search and rescue, even again in the factories with a level of more sophistication, they are still far from really replacing humans. So if there is a message that makes you feel a little bit better, that's also a positive one. Of course, there are all the ethical dilemmas and all the issues that many of us heard about, particularly if we endow, for instance, autonomous cars with algorithms to decide what to do in difficult situations, like whether they should protect the people on board or the people that just cross the road inadvertently. I mean, the thing is a very important ethical and philosophical issue, but the fact is we don't know whether we have an algorithm in our heads that take these decisions as well. Probably not. It probably is done some other way. And also there's an issue, particularly in robotics, that is very important for this purpose, is that everything is plagued, and it's a bug, it's a feature, not a bug, with uncertainty in our decision-making, in our observation of the world. So in the end, even if we have a carefully programmed algorithms to take all these difficult decisions, they might be fooled by this uncertainty, both in what we observe, I mean, there's a person there or not, and on the effect of the decisions we take. I mean, we decide to take the car in a given direction, it does not really go in that direction. So all these are issues that I think it's important that people at least touch a little bit, because they didn't understand better what are the real risks or not. Then we can think of what the robots can do well already. They can fortunately do, especially in the last few years, there were a lot of progresses, but this has been for decades now, a lot of interesting things. Whenever it's repetitive tasks, automation, industrial manipulation, they can do it pretty well, usually. You see more and more autonomous navigation in autonomous driving, showing that it's getting close to commercial solutions. So this is, in fact, a very good result of robotics these days being applied in real life, not only in autonomous cars, but in vacuum cleaners, in automatic guided vehicles, in drones, and so on. There's more and more nice interaction with humans when it's done using what we call haptic devices like touch screens, keyboards, game pads, and so on. And a lot of progress in what is currently called AI, but AI is much more than that, in machine learning, on recognizing the world around the robots. It's not just used for robots, but it's very much used for robots. You can see, for instance, in this picture here, an algorithm recognizing quite well, distinguishing buildings, people, cars, and so on. And this is very precious information if you are a robot navigating in this environment. What they cannot do so well, and it's important to know, is to take decisions fully autonomously, to learn complex behaviors from experience, and particularly to be versatile. So you can actually admire an algorithm that plays well chess or Go, but it won't be able to do anything else but that. And if you want a robot that goes at home and helps you at home, that's already difficult enough. If you want to use that robot to go do the shopping and the other things, it won't do it. There's no such a robot that can do all this currently. And I would dare to say that we are still far from it, even though there are impressive advances that you can observe. Let me go through a sequence of nice examples of where the robots can be positively used. So I'll show you several images, videos, and so on. And let me be a little bit abusive here and show particularly things done in Portugal, given the motivation for this meeting today. So things that we do at our place, though I won't just be limited to that. And I would actually like to start with some work we did already many years ago, where, by the way, Dr. Fausto was very much involved when he was here, which was the development of semi-autonomous robots for search and rescue operations. Semi-autonomous because the robot can be teleoperated and can do some things autonomously. This was very successful in Portugal in mediatic terms, and also because we used it for, this was the original one, developed with a spin-off from IST. We used it with the fire department of Lisbon, and even in drills at the European level, like this one here in Sicily in 2005. Then the company developed another version, more complex, and we, particularly some other people in my group at the Institute, are using it in other operations with with the civil protection, with first responders in general. So this robot can go to a place and reach places that would be difficult for humans to reach, and provide communication with the people there, and maybe even taking some light, maybe some water as a first step towards then someone going there and helping the person to escape. A lot of work that is going on in robotics, and actually a lot of it funded and pushed by the European Commission, is on network, is in general in domestic robots and robots that interact with people at home. But in particular, we have been doing a lot of it with multiple robots, or with robots networked with multiple devices. And I've been very much involved in robot competitions, and particularly at the European level, we were among the first being funded for organizing that as a research motivation. And here's an example of something we did for the first of those projects called Rocking. This is accelerated and without sound, but this is a robot that can go, you can see here the apartment. The robot can go to several places, like with a room. The person in the room is telling the robot what she wants it to do, which is to go and pick up an object in the living room. The robot goes there. Is going, in this case, I think he is unable to pick up the object, so robots fail, but he almost does it. And then he returns and he asks for other orders. The person can even ask the robot to switch on lights like this one here remotely, to put up blinders like this one here, also up and down. So it can do a lot of things, even if she is in her bed and has troubles, remotely and using the robot. So it's a very helpful element at home, especially with people who's handicapped, or who's temporarily ill, or who just needs company. It's not probably the best one, but it's better than having nothing. Another example of this, we have done it actually in another robot competition, but I'm sorry, I have to put the sound down. I don't see the sound for some strange reason. Well, anyway, I'll try to speak up. So this robot can go out of the home and go to help the person pick up things outside of the home. Actually, I should be able to do it, but for some reason, I'm unable to advance the video as well. That's bad. So I'll show just part of it. There were interesting parts in the end. So the robot tracks the person, in this case. It actually leaves the comfort of the inside of the apartment. It goes to a less explored zone. So technically, this is all very challenging. And then actually can go to a place, pick up objects, bring them back in the home. We call it help me carry, because it could go out of the home, go to the car and bring up the shopping bags. Sorry for the noise. I thought I could advance here the video, but I could not for some strange reason. This one has also sound, so I hope it's okay. This was a project, very successful as well, that we developed in the frame of FP7. It was actually coordinated by us, and it was a project that developed a robot for the oncology pediatric ward of an hospital that can interact with children. Actually, children will stay there for a long time, and which benefit of having this kind of interaction with the robot. This is my colleague in my group who coordinated the project, where I participated as well. And the benefits of the project were also assessed by the doctors, who said that the kids, in fact, had a much better performance after they could play games and even have some classes assisted by the robot. There were, for instance, games like this one here, where it's actually a cooperative game, where the robot plays flow free with the person, and even with the kids, in this case the girl, by suggesting what she should do next in order to, together with it, to succeed in winning the game. This is a projector that projects the game on the ground, and then everything is synchronized between the different devices, and the robot can do that. We also did work in another hospital where this is something that usually is very beneficial, having autistic children interacting with machines. And in this case, we particularly developed a machine that moves around. It's a robot and can have expressions and talk to the kid and encourage him or her to do several interesting things. There were cameras in the ceiling that detect the presence of where the kid is and tell the robot so that the robot looks at him or her. There's a nurse that also can speak and give some hints to the robot about what is going on. And all this, it interprets the voice, and all this is done autonomously. So the robot was a derivation of the previous one of Monarch to have some capabilities that were particularly interesting for the games played with the kids. For instance, you see a ball here. This is one of the games where the kid has to find spheres all over scattered all over the room, has to find them and put them in the belly of the robot. And the robot encourages the child to actually do that all the time. And there's one thing, it's really a pity I cannot, just going to put this in full screen, because at least, I think you see the same, but at least I can advance the video, sorry. Can you see it still well? Can someone say it? Can you see?
I can see for all its work.
Okay, and now I can advance. So you see, for instance, here, the robot tries to enter the place where there's a puzzle to be finished, but he finds that there's an obstacle. And so he shows a sad face, not yet, and encourages the kid to do something to let him in. So like here. Everything is in Portuguese. Okay, and after a while, the kid understands with the help of the therapists, and she removes the obstacle from the way. Yeah. And the robot detects that and gets in and shows a face of appreciation. Okay, I have to move quickly because my time is up. But there's robots being used for many other things which are interesting. One very pressing these days is, of course, the use of robots to help medic personnel in hospitals so that they can go close to people who has COVID. And so it's highly infectious and they should save the nurses and the doctors. But at the same time, not only it can take medicine and food, but it can also provide means of communicating, which makes the life of the people who have to be quarantined a little bit better and more interesting. This is an example of robots developed in China for this purpose, but there are several going on around the world, including in Portugal, that resulted, I mean, of the technology that existed and of the needs that also funded some of these projects. Okay, the next two slides, I'll skip them because they, I mean, time is up and they were not too relevant, just to say that we can use technology not just for direct robotics, but for autonomous vehicles that even communicate with each other, with smart cities, a lot of sensing in the cities that can be used to then take decisions that help reducing, for instance, pollution, directing people to the best places, and so on. In short, and then summarizing, I think the future will be better with robots, and particularly with intelligent robots. We should not forget about the dangers, but we should above all believe that the good things are coming from the technology. And that's it. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Professor. So the second speaker of today is Dr. Tomislav Bracanovic from the Institute of Philosophy here in Zagreb, who will intrigue us with his talk, Artificial Intelligence Among Social Animals.
Thank you very much, Fausto. Check whether it's working. Good. Thank you very much. Well, Madam Ambassador, dear Dean of the Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Computing, dear colleagues and friends. First, I would like to thank you, of course, for inviting me here to this event. And this is going to be something a little bit different than the first and really exciting presentation by Professor Lima. And I also believe that we have a better future with AI and robots, but my point will be that we need to be, of course, careful and like this. Okay. That we also have to be, to some extent, careful and look out how are we going to develop and apply these new technologies. As it is already mentioned, I am not in my native habitat here. I'm a philosopher, but I have been teaching with Professor Stepan Bogdan for 3 years now this course on the ethics of new technologies here at the Faculty of Engineering, and my talk will be basically some kind of an extension and a couple of talking points about these new technologies from this ethical perspective. Now, how do we know? Well, this is my question. How do we know that there is something exciting going on between AI and the society? We know if we look at the major global institutions, and I will mention a couple of examples of such global institutions dealing with these new issues raised by AI and robotics. The first institution I would like to mention here is UNESCO. And this is kind of, personal thing because I have been member of UNESCO's World Commission for the Ethics of Scientific Knowledge and Technology for the past 8 years. And I have to say that for the past 3 or 4 years, we made a strong turn towards AI and robotics. We produced 3 reports, for example, during the past 3 or 4 years on robotics ethics, on the ethics of artificial intelligence, and our latest report is going to be about the Internet of Things, about the ethical implications of Internet of Things, especially at both individual, social, and political levels. And I can tell you, whenever we presented these reports to a wider audience, especially to member states of the UNESCO, these always raised such a huge interest. Many people from all around the world are extremely interested in these new technologies, but also for their social and ethical implications. Should be mentioned, of course, without a doubt, that of course the European Union and European Commission also invested a lot of energy and a lot of time into producing a number of documents related to the impact of AI and robotics on society. One such document is this relatively well-known high-level expert group on artificial intelligence, this ethics guidelines for a so-called trustworthy AI. So this is another proof that there is really something interesting and fascinating going on when it comes to AI and robotics and their impact on society and their ethical implications. One of the things that needs to be mentioned, especially since we are here at this faculty, is the IEEE's contribution to these matters. It is the relatively well-known document now, which is called Ethically Aligned Design. IEEE had a special group of experts working on this document for quite some time, and in 2019 they published it, and they also acknowledged that these societal and ethical implications of AI and robotics need to be taken into account and addressed in a rational and well-balanced way, respecting various values people usually entertain. So this is the idea. 3 major institutions, like UNESCO, European Union, even the IEEE, are already on their way to address these new challenges posed by artificial intelligence and robotics. When it comes to, sciences or so-called social sciences and humanities, there is also a huge shift, a huge focus on new technologies and their ethical and social implications. This is just one small illustration. Recently, a call for proposals was announced at the European level for projects that will be addressing various cultural and social implications of AI and robotics, especially digital technologies. This call for proposals will be worth around 36 million euros. And this is quite a proof, in my opinion, that there is really something exciting going on when it comes to AI and robotics and their impact on our social lives. And it is not surprising that we, people from humanities and social sciences are so much interested in AI and robotics. Because this is a standard textbook on artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence is defined there as actually 6 disciplines that compose most of AI. It is natural language processing, knowledge representation, automated reasoning to use the stored information to answer questions and to draw a new conclusion, machine learning, computer vision, and robotics. When you look at the words that are written in red, that are emphasized in red, these are basically the key words of so many, humanities and social sciences, like language, communication, knowledge, reasoning, information. So many social sciences and humanities are dealing with the very same issues, like philosophy, of course, communication science, education science, psychology, logic, and so on. So there is a strong connection between AI and robotics and social sciences and humanity. Now, one of the fastest growing industries when it comes to humanities is, of course, the ethics of AI and robotics. As I said, we also have this course here at the Faculty of Engineering, which is called the Ethics of New Technologies. And these new technologies are usually artificial intelligence, robotics, and their applications in our lives. Now, there are so many, publications already, scholarly articles, collections of papers, already introductions to the ethics of AI and robotics. And there are also a rising number of topics that we are trying to deal with in this ethics of AI, like the impact of AI on human employment, which Professor Lima also already mentioned in his talk, about various medical or even military applications of AI and robotics. One of the hottest topics is, of course, the threats to privacy when it comes to these new technologies. There is a special, set of problems like the digital divide problem, this unequal access to technologies between different individuals or even different countries, dual use problems, the transparency and algorithmic bias problem. This is something that is really, somehow, capturing the attention of so many philosophers today, but also engineers who are also becoming, in a way, philosophers because of this shared interest in these problems. So this is a really booming field of research. Professor Lima also mentioned a typical example of, this huge interest in ethics of AI, and probably one of the famous examples is these autonomous vehicles problem, because they do promise, of course, benefits like a safer and more efficient traffic. They also promise to reduce the number of traffic fatalities if they are going to be safer than human drivers. But then again, they also pose challenges which we need to address, like how should they, react in situations of, some unfortunate choices. Say, should they sacrifice passengers or pedestrians depending on their numbers and so on? Who should decide how will they react in these situations? The individual, the state, or the manufacturers? These are dilemmas that, people from working in the ethics of AI are trying to resolve. Another example is, of course, the social robotics, which we also was addressed to some extent in the first talk. The question is here, of course, there are benefits of various applications of social robotics. We can have a more independent and fulfilled life for example, physically handicapped people. Or we can find replacement for, lacking human workforce in hospitals and similar institutions. But then again, we also have this danger of emotional dependence or addiction on robots. There can be some kind of deception going on when we apply such robots, especially to the elderly or to the children. There is an additional danger of, increasing social isolation of various people, and so on and so on. So I'm mentioning this just as an example of things that people who are working in the ethics of AI are trying to address and resolve. Now, I'm going now towards the end of my talk. How are we usually, this is the question, how are we usually trying to resolve such issues? Well, we usually try to employ some kind of moral theory, like utilitarianism or deontology, and see whether we can use their principles to solve the ethical dilemmas posed by AI and robotics. Utilitarianism says, well, we should, have the principle to maximize common good, to have the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people, and we should do it in an impartial way. We shouldn't care about what is in it for me, but what is in it for us. What will, be the most beneficial way to deal with these things. The ontologists, they say, well, we should be aware of human rights, human dignity, whether we use people as mere instruments or means, which is absolutely forbidden, and so on. Now, and this is what I wanted to emphasize here, maybe as a talking point for the discussion. Whichever solution we apply, we can be utilitarians, we can be deontologists, we can be virtue ethicists, we can be contractualists, never mind. Whichever solution we employ, we will always be, to some extent, and remain dissatisfied, because we can recognize that there is always something, right about the other way of dealing with these issues. If we wanted to sacrifice human rights to maximize some common good, we will regret for being necessary to sacrifice those human rights. If it's the other way around, if we sacrifice the common good to preserve some human rights, we will be sorry and feel some kind of, regret why we didn't do it in the other way around. So this is one of the problems of dealing with these issues from the ethical point of view. And now the question is, why are we, constantly dissatisfied with these ethical solutions we have? I think, and this is the title basically and the main point of my talk, this is basically because we are social animals. This is my, proposal, that we have to understand that when we are dealing with moral dilemmas, we are social animals. This is Aristotle's point. We live in communities. We are not gods, we are not beasts, we are social animals. And the reason why these new technologies, like autonomous vehicles, social robots, various applications of AI, why they trigger our emotions is because we are social beings and social animals. And these new technologies are somehow getting involved into our social life. But then again, the question is, why are we not able to find, final ethical solutions to these very same problems? I believe the answer is again the same, because we are social animals, because we have basically evolved, time, evolutionary time. We are made of, flesh and blood. We have, similar patterns of behavior like other social animals, and we are practically not perfect utilitarians. We are not perfect deontologists. We sometimes even do not care about ethical issues at all. And the point is this is why we always feel that we haven't done our job, you know, in its entirety when we are trying to solve these issues with, like AI and robotics. My point here is basically that we are not adapted to these new circumstances of life. We are basically still, you know, more or less like hunter-gatherers. This is the idea. Our minds haven't evolved that much like our technology has evolved. And it is difficult for us, for our moral minds, to cope with these new challenges that are going on, especially when it comes to AI and robotics. So I am not expecting basically that we are going to solve, you know, once and for all these ethical dilemmas. You know, we are talking very frequently about we need to regulate this from the ethical point of view. I don't think that we will ever be able to say that, well, now this is the moment we have done it. We will never be able to complete it because these technologies are evolving, and this is basically an open process and a work in progress, this kind of ethical regulation. Okay, it's 16 minutes, so I will stop here, and I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Bracanovic. We'll now have the roundtable. This roundtable will be moderated by Professor Nikola Mišković. He's the FER-'s Vice Dean for Research. He's joining us from home. And I'd like to join the previous speakers and Professor Stepan Bogdan from FER to join us in this roundtable. For all the questions, please use Slido if you are home. If you are here, we'll be able to have this microphone for questions. If you don't have the link, Nikola nicely puts the number there of the event. Just go to slide.do and enter this code. Thank you. Nikola, the floor is yours.
So thank you, Fausto. I just wanted to mention that this is not my phone number, but this is the code that you should use for Slido to ask questions, so feel free to do so. And also thank you for introducing Professor Stepan Bogdan. When we had the idea of organizing this roundtable with Madam Ambassador, we wanted to have some experts in the areas of robotics and AI. And of course, we wanted to have some from Portugal and some from Croatia. But instead of having these usual discussions between roboticists, we also wanted to include Dr. Bracanovic, who would give us the philosophical point of view on the ethics in robotics. So thank you very much for joining us. And also Professor Bracanovic. Professor Schneider was also planned to join us, but due to some unavoidable problems, he could not. So Stepan, maybe to start first with you. Everybody at FER knows you for your experience in aerial robotics, even though your expertise goes much beyond aerial robotics. You have participated in a number of EU-funded projects where you developed robotic systems that communicate with animals, specifically with bees, with fish. Currently, you are working on a robotic system that will enhance the quality of life in cities by talking to plants. So Dr. Bracanovic mentioned that we are social animals. You develop robots that communicate with animals, even with plants. Can you give us your perspective on the work that you do, how it relates with the artificial intelligence, and can you tell us a bit more about that work and how do ethics fit into research where animals or even plants may be involved?
Thank you for the question. I removed my mask because I suppose this microphone has a cable, so it's only for myself, and I wouldn't ruin life on anybody else here, so it's much easier to talk without a mask. Thank you for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here and to discuss this very, very hot and a very interesting topic. So your question, which is related to ethics in research with the animals, from this point of view, I would say that there are two major research tracks that are on the opposite sides of ethics spectrum. From one side, we have a majority of research projects that actually observe social animals, not human beings, but other social animals like bees, ants, and so on. And by observing those social animals, we would like to decipher those behavior in order maybe to help us to come up with the algorithms that could be used in our society. Because as most of you know, social animals are actually decentralized systems, so there is no some master ruler that rules honey, bee, hive, or flock of birds, but everything is decentralized. So we would like to observe and we would like to decipher. And now when we have robotics and artificial intelligence, we can do this much more sophisticated, because we can build devices that could get into the animal society, and then those devices, as Nicola said, could talk. We should accept this talk very broadly. They could communicate somehow with those animals. And this is where robotics come into picture. And artificial intelligence is the second step, because by observing and by collecting a huge amount of data, artificial intelligence methods could help us to process those data in real time, and then to come up with those algorithms and with those behaviors. On this side of ethics, there are no problems, I would say, because there are strict rules. Everybody follows those rules, and everybody is known. You have to go to ethical committee, you have to sign the papers. And as far as our projects are concerned, and majority of the projects, we do not harm animals, and we do not break twigs on the trees. On the other hand, there are other research track that is not so much related to robotics and artificial intelligence, but is more related to bioengineering, CRISPR technologies, where we directly could change the bodies and change the features of animals. This is highly questionable research. Different countries and different societies have different points of view on this research. On most of the countries, this kind of research with animals and plants is forbidden, but still there are some countries that do this kind of research. So as far as research and animals are concerned, those are two major tracks, and I would like to emphasize again, our point of view is that we should not harm animals in any way, and that's the research that we have done with our partners.
Okay, Stjepan, thank you. But so at the other end, we do use robots for interaction with humans. And as we saw in Pedro's presentation, you intensively use robots to interact with children, for example, in hospitals. Were there any ethical issues that you faced, and I believe there were, during your experiments, and how do you solve them?
So there were, though most of them were a little bit on the side of the robotics problem, compared, for instance, with what was just said about the interaction with the animals. Because particularly in the case of the children, both in the oncological hospital and also the autistic children, the major problem was that we were all the time taking pictures or videos, and so the faces of the people, of the children in particular, should not be visible if we would show them in other places, but like scientific congresses and so on. But of course, we can think of this as an extra problem if we start having robots in hospitals or at home, because they are using their cameras to process images and decide what to do, among other things. And so you must be careful to make sure that that's it. They don't use it for anything else. They don't share the images with other people or with other robots, with other places all around the world. And this is usually a matter of preoccupation. And so what people very often do is to take measures to ensure that the images stay in the robot and are not shared with through the internet, in the cloud, or whatsoever. Of course, this is a difficult problem because, as very often happens in the technology, and we saw already very good references to that as well, there's always a clash between what we need to make the technology better, even in the sense of really helping people, and taking care of these problems. For instance, being able to access the web to find more information can help robots to take better decisions, like we humans do, actually. But if they do, they must be interconnected. And when they get the images, there's always the risk that even if they don't share those images, some hacker comes and takes them. So all these are things that people get concerned all the time and worried about. But usually these were the major things we have to get worried with. Of course, also the safety of the people involved, so that the robots should not make, fast movements, possibly dangerous movements or situations and so on. But those are a little bit more easier to handle, let's say, with the current technology.
Definitely, that goes without saying. But Tomislav, maybe from your perspective, you see what we as roboticists consider to be ethical issues. We know that we are not allowed to harm animals. We know when addressing children or other people, we have to take care of hiding their faces. What is your opinion on this? There is a big discussion in the AI community about the ethical issues related to manipulation of people by using robots. How do you see this problem? Do you see that there is a problem?
Yeah, thank you for your question. And your question is a complex one because, you know, there are various kinds of manipulation. We sometimes manipulate people for their own good. I actually do it very often with my children. You have to manipulate them for their own good. And there is a question, of course, if your manipulation is malevolent and with bad intentions, then of course it is something that shouldn't be done and it should be prohibited. But then again, if your manipulation is for the good of those who are manipulated, then there might be something, you know, permissible about this. So I think that maybe we should approach with this idea also when we come to manufacture robots. Because I'm pretty sure that when you use robots on, for example, autistic children, it is a sensitive ethical issue, but if such robots do help in the therapy of such children, then maybe this kind of manipulation is a welcome manipulation that shouldn't be prohibited. It should be done carefully, but not prohibited. But of course, if you use robots to manipulate people, you know, I don't know, elderly people in elderly homes, you know, to, I don't know, give away their money or something like that, then this is something that should be prohibited. And we shouldn't, this is basically my point, we shouldn't, you know, immediately conclude from the word manipulation that it needs to be bad. There are qualifications to manipulation, and it should be, we should tackle it with you know, carefully.
Can I just say something quickly about this?
Please, yes.
In the example of the autistic children, you just reminded me that there was an issue related to what you just said. I agree. It's very interesting your viewpoint that manipulation, if it is good, whatever that is, we have also to qualify, but it's probably a good output of the system. Sometimes, even in that situation, however, we must pay attention all the time because there may be relatively bad consequences. In that particular case, it happened that in the beginning, almost in the first experiments, I didn't know much about the reactions of the autistic children. I had heard and I had read about it, but I had never seen it to machines, let's say, particularly a machine like a robot that moves around and so on. It's very... And the first thing that happened was something that apparently is typical. The child would look into the eyes of the robot, something that usually he would not do with the doctors. And they immediately noticed that, they told us. And they were happy with it. But at some point, they started being worried that the children might prefer all the time to be looking at machines, and they would again lose their social part, their social side, which was what we wanted to promote. That's a problem they have, let's say, or at least something they don't develop so well. So with a very good intention, we might create another problem. I mean, I'm saying, I'm not being negative. I'm just pointing it out because it came to my mind when you mentioned it.
Okay, very interesting. And when it comes to that, I would like to read one of the questions that we have on slide that touches upon the issue of emotions and mixing them with AI. So the question is it possible to design a system that biases AI with emotions? And what would be the benefits? So I assume that the question was related to merging AI with emotions, and what would be the benefits of such a system?
Anyone? You want me to
Pedro,
answer?
maybe you can say, yeah, yes. Sorry, I was looking in your direction, but I just...
I'm sorry. Yeah,
that
exactly.
you don't see that.
Okay, good. No problem. That's fine. In fact, it's very curious because when we think of emotions, usually let's say the expected version of the interpretation of what we are talking about is whether having robots that cry and smile and so on can help us. And that's part of the truth. But there's a lot of research going in the neurosciences and applied in AI. And in fact, there's a Portuguese celebrated for that, Antonio Damasio, who actually uses emotions to help people, who explains how people take better decisions based on emotions, compared to the usual idea that we are just rational. And so then there were people that picked on that and started using this idea to make the robots take decisions based on their emotions. I mean, an example is, I think it's like a standard example. If you go with your family in the car and you just fall in a river or a lake, your probably first rational decision should be to escape and leave everything behind you so that you would save your life. But you probably won't do that, and you will try to save your family even if you risk to die. And that's because it's marked on your brain that this is something very important for you. So that's the kind of emotion we are talking about. And so this really can bring some interesting issues for robots, which were unexpected, because usually we think of them as rational, trying to mimic rational beings.
So, Stjepan, what is your experience with that? I know that in your lab, Professor Kovacic did also some work with autistic children. You are using humanoid robots for various purposes. How do you see emotion? Do you prefer having a robot that exhibits emotions, that takes use of our emotions, or not?
Well, I think that Zdenko is here actually, so maybe he could answer this question, which is related to autism. Then I can jump in later on.
That would be great. I didn't see. I don't see.
He's here.
Okay, hello to everyone. So, emotions are very dangerous, I would say, but we are trying to use them for, let's say, for benefit, for something good. So one action that we had with our humanoid robot Pepper was coaching and supervising the rehabilitation exercises, which are usually done after fractures of your hands, limbs in general. And I experienced such an event when I broke my both arms. And then I went through the therapy sessions, which were, very, very sad in the beginning. So when I sat there with a group of people and we did our exercises, the mood there was awful, so negative. And then they asked me to lead the exercises so that I will start showing them and others will repeat them. I said, okay, I have my conditions. We need to feel the pain, because without pain, there is no progress in rehabilitation.
No gain.
So I said, okay, we can take a few jokes every morning and we can exercise like hell because we want to recover. I'm a sportsman, you know that. I'm still playing basketball, so I wanted to recover quickly. And that good atmosphere actually helped everyone to recover much faster than the therapists, physiotherapists expected. And now we have a robot which can see and which can recognize emotions, because Pepper is advertised as a robot able to recognize emotions. So we said, okay, let's make it very simple. When I'm exercising, if I feel the pain, my face will be more or less not very happy, but this can be also a positive emotion, because I'm doing the exercise, and the robot can recognize that this person is really working hard to recover. On the other hand, if this face is happy, it's even better because I can see, I can recognize gestures which are each exercise by itself. And if the person is doing it well, and if it's smiling, and from time to time showing the sign of pain, this means this is the perfect rehabilitation exercise or session. So on that, we based our development of a robot coaching, where we used some kind of, let's say, natural language, natural communication. We said, okay, keep on, just 3 more, just do it hard, oh, great, and so on. So motivation is something what robot can offer to the person that is under the rehabilitation. And so that's what we did. And the patients which we had in the traumatology hospital here in Zagreb, they accepted the robot as something very new and very, I would say, very great, you know. But then the COVID pandemic happened, everything stopped, and right now I cannot say more about this experience, but emotions can be helpful if you treat them in the right way. I would say so.
Thank you very much, Denko. I'm happy to see that you are here. You are definitely the person to talk about this, because your research does go well with what Pedro is doing in his lab. But time is passing by, and there are a few more questions that I would like to raise. We all agree that people love robots. Children definitely love robots. Everybody loves seeing a robot. Just recently, Professor Kovačić had his paper robot in the Croatian parliament, and of course all members of the parliament loved the robots, even though she was making fun of them just a little bit, and even though there were jokes around the media saying that finally there's some intelligence in the Croatian parliament, but everybody loved the robot. But at one point, when this robot starts doing things that can jeopardize human activities, like compromising their jobs, people are starting to fear robots. Tomislav, what is your opinion on this?
I was afraid that you're going to ask me this question. Well,
this is because I assume what the professor of robotics would answer to this question. So I'm interested to know what you think.
Yeah. Well, we philosophers are usually, when it comes to these matters like robotics and artificial intelligence, we tend to be party breakers. You know, we tend to see all the negative things. At least for a while, this was like that when this whole idea of AI and robotics ethics started. Well, philosophers were very, very keen on finding only the negative sides of, you know, these new developments in AI and robotics. But it is really great that things are changing a bit now, and I happen to see myself as a philosopher who is more optimistic about these things. And when people, you know, fear about this potential danger that they will lose their jobs because of new technologies like AI and robotics, well, there are some pretty good arguments today suggesting that maybe they shouldn't have such fears, because as we also heard today, that basically these new technologies are also creating new jobs and new employment opportunities, because it was always the case that any new technology used to reduce, you know, the number of employment or works or working tasks, but the new ones were created. And I believe that maybe it is about educating people and explaining to them that they shouldn't be, you know, that much afraid of these new technologies, but they should also be on the lookout, of course, because when they choose their professions today and how are they going to be educated, they have to be aware that things are not like they used to be before, that once you have your job, you can keep it for the next 30 or 40 years. Now the job market is different, and this is basically the reality we are all going to have to face. So I think that it is more about educating and explaining to people that basically these new developments are, in the long run at least, a good thing. And we should, of course, then take care to somehow, help those people who are going to find themselves in difficult positions because they might really lose their jobs. But this is maybe a question not that maybe roboticists don't have to be concerned that much about it, but maybe the governments or some political institutions, but not roboticists themselves. So I am not a party breaker philosopher. I'm all for this technological development, but of course with certain amount of care.
Maybe I can take the side of Tomislav, since he was not party breaker. But I think that this technology, which is related to robotics and artificial intelligence, is something different that never happened in the history. As Tomislav said, technology develops from the beginning of human beings. So we had the industrial revolution, we had the cars, we had the planes, and so on. And as it was said, new technology always somehow brought with itself new jobs, new opportunities, and in the same time some jobs and some skills became obsolete. And in a 5 to 10 years period, usually people adjusted to these new technologies and gained new knowledge and so on. But this moment, with robots and artificial intelligence, those jobs that would be lost, it would be very, very difficult for people to acquire novel skills that will be able, for example, programming algorithms, designing robots and so on, because those are very, very complex and very, very complicated skills. And we always have to have in mind that we have a Gaussian distribution of, how to say, smartness among people. So more and more people would become somehow, their work would become obsolete, and actually they wouldn't be able to contribute to the society by their work. And work is fundamental part of a human. So I think that it's very, very harsh word, but there will be useless people as far as work is considered. Mm-hmm. And this might be a huge problem for the society. So more and more people will lag behind because technology will develop and they wouldn't be able to get the skills. I'm not so optimistic as Tomislav.
This is, well, I have to say that this comes as a big surprise, because I didn't expect Tomislav to be on that side and Stjepan you on the other side. But still, let's have a sort of a ruling by Pedro. Pedro, what is your opinion?
I knew it. I would have to say something about it. I was trying to escape. No, seriously. I'm actually, I won't help much because I'm a little bit in the middle somehow. But let me try, since today I was playing the positive side, let me try to keep it. Opposite to what people may think, many of us are worried about the impact. I mean, many maybe aren't either. By the way, we had a philosopher of science working with us for many years. Fausto knows him well. He's currently a deputy in the Portuguese parliament, which probably also helps in tackling these things. And he brought a lot of very interesting ideas on how to handle not just ethical issues, but even at the technical level. I mean, not this direct contribution, but indirectly. And we did a lot of nice work during his stay and afterwards, even recently, a PhD on social robotics. And I think that the point is, as it was said, usually technologies, when they arrive, they replace jobs, but then for a lot of reasons, including human creativity, we tend to find other things that we need to solve, because those were already solved, in this case, by the technology. And so we always invent new ways. What I would be more concerned with now is not so much that, which I think it will happen as well. For instance, programming. It's true, not everyone will become programmers, but I also doubt that we need to program things all at the same level. I've seen situations, I saw for instance, I think it was you were not making any advertisement, but talking about their future generation of aerial taxis, and they needed, they would replace a lot of people driving taxis, true, but at the same time, they needed people that would observing what the fleet was doing, solving by teleoperation small problems when they were stuck somewhere, and so they would need a lot of people to do this job. And maybe these people would need to do some programming at the level of, you know, a very high level of abstraction, and they could quickly become experts on that. Also because some of these could be the people who knew what's at stake in the area of driving people by cabs, right? So I think these things reinvent themselves. Just quickly. Now, the problem is that now the technology evolves fast. So kind of re-educating people or educating new people for new technology may be too slow. At the same time, and that was part of the message I tried to pass, I think robots and even virtual AI will take longer than what many people think to do these amazing things and replace us. And so we have time to prepare on the way, as it always happens.
Could I just come in to add something?
Please.
Would you allow a non-expert to speak? No, thank you. I first of all to thank all of you for this interesting inputs into this fascinating conversation. But I just wanted to say that in my eyes, I'm not that, I mean, I would not be that pessimistic because my experience is, of course, of another kind. But I think that what the main word, the main aspect for this would be adaptation. And I think that human beings have this wonderful and extraordinary skills in adapting. Just to give you a very personal example, for instance, my daughters that are now 30 plus years, when they were born, of course, they were not playing with this kind of toys, with the computers, iPads. But my grandkids, I mean, I have one that is only 2 years old. She touches the phone into what she really wants it to do. I mean, to change the whatever she's seeing, to move it around. And nobody taught her. So this is something really extraordinary. I mean, so on the one hand, it's the adaptation. And of course, on the other hand, is the training. But I think that human beings and even the elderly have the capacity to move forward with history and with development. So just an optimistic word. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those optimistic words, definitely. Here we again could go back to the topic of using technology to manipulate people, because while all of us, when we see our children playing with technology and we see how they handle them so easily, on the other hand, we could consider it to be, again, a fearful thing. How is it possible that these technologies are developed in such a way that even children can use them? But I will not go back into that discussion. I would like to go a step further and address something that you mentioned, and that was education. So many of us here are professors who do have contact with students. Some of us students who are involved in engineering, and some of us who are maybe less involved in engineering. Do you believe that our engineering students are aware of social implications of AI? And is it a problem if they are not? Pedro, what do you think? What is your experience?
Okay, good. I can say something about that. I believe that many of them are not, for a lot of reasons. For the way we actually teach engineer, usually, the more or less the classical way, we tend to, I'm speaking we, I hope it does not include me, but maybe it also does in a way, because I was also, my background is that one. But a lot of people teaching engineering, they probably either don't care too much about that, or when, even if they do, when they teach, they just are concerned about the technical aspects, more or less understandably. And they will never pass the message because it's like a secondary issue, apparently, that we should care about the social implications. However, in the last few years, research has become more and more multidisciplinary. We have here several people showing that, and I give you an example with us, but especially in robotics, there's a lot of people working with neurologists, psychologists, whatever, and people are more and more getting into that. Even the research is being pushed in that direction, and I think this has an impact on education as well. To give you a very concrete example, that's why I said I could say something about that. IST, my school, where Fausto actually also got his degree, is undergoing a really revolutionary change in a sense. Starting next year, all the degrees, which are mostly engineering, there's also maths and physics, but change their curriculum deeply. And I know well the hard way because I'm the coordinator of one of them on the electrical and computer engineering. And one of the big changes is that the students will now take 2 courses on the humanities, arts, and social sciences. This, for people who know IST or probably any faculty of engineering worldwide, is like a revolution. And of course, there were a lot of reactions that were not so positive inside. But this has to do with that. Maybe it won't help too much. Depends on the courses they take because it's quite free. But it probably is a good first step, and it shows that people at the level of the educators is getting concerned with that. And we want the students more and more to take their way and to understand these challenges as well.
Okay, great. Stjepan, what is your experience with the FER students?
Well, as Tomislav said, we have this course here at our faculty, and actually, if you count the students that we had the first year, second and third year, first year we have I think 23 students, then we had 55, and now we have 87. So in 2 years, number is 4 times that at the beginning. So they are becoming more and more aware of the importance of this. And also, I know that this course will be taught as well at the PhD program, which is very good. So in that sense, I'm optimistic. We are getting more and more students, and I think that they are becoming aware of the importance of these new technologies and how they could implicate social life.
Tomislav, is this your feeling also?
Yeah, I absolutely. On this one, I agree with you. And I actually wanted to add that basically, I don't think that students are not aware of these problems, but they are aware of them, but in an unsystematic way. You know, they hear things, you know, from the media about this or that problem related to AI and robotics, privacy, I don't know, manipulation and so on. But I think the real benefit of such courses, both at the graduate and postgraduate levels, is that it systematizes their, you know, fragmentary knowledge about these things and gives them some kind of conceptual tools how to deal with these problems. You know, you have to know something more about, I don't know, the history of political, ethical ideas, so that you can, you know, have a fruitful and, you know, really rational discussion about this, so that you are not, you know, remain, you know, with the media reports about it, which can be confused and, you know, sensationalist and so on. You have to have a sober look at these problems, and I think that this is the best achievement of these courses, is to systematize, you know, students' approach to these problems. So this is my opinion about this.
Maybe if I can just comment, and it is tightly related to one of the questions that we have on Slido, and the question is on how to address biases that are inherent in data sets, and how to avoid training artificial intelligence that basically replicates existing social biases. So this is something that I believe engineering students are well familiarized, because they are the ones dealing with the data, they're the ones processing the data, and they know that the output will be biased if the input is biased. So do you maybe have, just as a reply to this question, so how to address these biases? Some of these biases we do not even recognize at the inputs. Pedro, do you maybe have an opinion on that?
Okay. First of all, I just wanted to say that I agree with Tomislav, and I even take back what I said a little bit, that the students are probably aware in a systematic way, and making them be aware systematically is definitely the way to go. Well, this problem is a much discussed problem, because especially when you use machine learning, you basically learn from data sets, and if the data sets are themselves biased in any way, including ethically, then we have a problem, right? And even if they are biased for reasons that you did not intend to, but just because there's the natural quote unquote prejudice or others, then it will happen. So actually, I agree with something that was said today, that it's difficult that we expect that we will have answers to all the ethical problems that are raised, and that we can regulate everything. I think that Europe has taken a very good first step of trying to, not many other regions in the world do that, of trying to regulate a bit the approaches and having the people developing algorithms of AI and machine learning to show that they abide by some rules, specifications, and so on. And this is probably the way to go. So then you need to build good data sets. You need to be worried with that. But we should also be careful, because if we do that, if we take that too far, then we risk not to be the ones who develop the technology that the whole world uses, and we end up with the technology of the people who don't care about that. So there's a balance, which I don't know exactly where it is, but I'm definitely a supporter of incorporating some of those regulations up to some extent.
Okay, thank you very much, Pedro. We should be wrapping up soon, but I have one more topic that I would like to touch base, and it's basically related to the European Union, European Commission, and how they see specific nation productivity when it comes to AI. I did a little research, and both Portugal and Croatia, together with Slovenia, who I thought that the ambassador was going to be here, are something that we call widening countries. Those are countries that perform a little bit less than the average GDP of the EU. And if you take a look at the number of scientific papers that are related to artificial intelligence in some way, you can see that 23% of those in a specific database are coming from a high-performing EU country, and around 6% are coming from these widening countries, so Croatia, Portugal, Slovenia, Bulgaria, Romania. So this is huge potential that exists in these widening countries. And my question to you is, how do you think widening countries within the EU could better collaborate to multiply this effect of their experience and knowledge in artificial intelligence? Because obviously it exists. Research papers exist, patents do exist, but the population of the widening countries in the EU is much higher than the percentage of this publication production. Stjepan, could you maybe comment on that? So what do you think, how could widening countries within the EU collaborate to emphasize their contribution to robotics and AI?
I think that this is not just a problem with robotics and AI. Maybe you checked those papers, but if we check any other field of research, I think that we would get the same numbers, maybe in medicine or mechanical engineering everywhere. So if I know this answer, I wouldn't sit here, because I will be some kind of a miracle man. So I would know exactly what to do in order to get to this 23% or even closer to this 23%. I think that what we could do is just to I don't know, try to collaborate with excellent researchers, as for example Professor Lima is, and to try to collaborate with them and somehow to participate in more and more projects that involve this kind of researchers. And this is the only way how I see do it. I mean, you have a project. There are many professors here in our faculty that has projects with partners from European Union, and this is the only way how we can do it. That's how we started, and that's how you started, Nicola, and many people here at the faculty just start to collaborate, meet somebody at the conference, and then start to talk about your ideas, etc. So I don't see other way. And also, it would be very, very helpful is if our countries, for example, Croatian government, could give more money from GDP to the research and education. That could be helpful, of course.
Pedro, are you the miracle man? We can't hear you.
I'm muted. I'm muted. Sorry, not at all. That question is easy. I agree with what was just said, because I think that the way to go is to collaborate, and so and it's true everything you said, everything Stefan said about these countries, because we usually have a scientific production above what would be expected from the population we have and the level of technological development. And we should take advantage of that, because then we are looking into the future. And so if we cooperate, even better, because we feel the same needs, and probably even with well-intentioned colleagues from other countries much more developed, it's different, because they have already their agenda, they have their own level of research and whatever, while we are struggling to be visible and sometimes doing things at the same level, but more difficult to make it visible, and working together helps. And so I think the European projects in particular are a great opportunity. One thing I'm just a little bit concerned, but this is general and has nothing to do with this in particular, is that Europe is more and more betting a lot of the funds for research on more, say, what is called innovation rather than research. And though I am a very usually application-oriented guy, I think it's becoming a bit too much, because the grants for people really doing the fundamental research are very limited, and they really require an enormous level of research ability, or even more than that. I mean, they are so few that it's very difficult to compete, even if you are extraordinary. And so the others are more and more industry oriented, and that's not, I guess, the best way, because on the one way you won't develop things that can become the industrial commercial products in the future, and at the same time the industry, instead of betting their own money, is kind of living off the public money to develop things. So I think there must be something in the middle. I understand we need to also kind of produce research which people see that is near to be useful, but the attention should be taken with the fundamental research that may not produce immediately good results. And Europe, I think, should be more careful about that.
I agree, Pedro. We are running out of time. Tomislav, I wanted to ask you if you maybe have some final comments to conclude the roundtable.
Well, I shouldn't be the one concluding the round table, because you also did a great job in moderating it. All I have to say is that I'm really happy that I was invited again to participate in this round table, and it was really inspiring, and I hope that we will do it maybe again sometime. I really enjoyed all the talks and all the interventions from the audience.
I also hope that soon we will have the opportunity to meet again in person. And I would like to thank Tomislav, Stjepan, and Pedro for participating, and also the ambassador and Professor Kovačić, who actively participated in the roundtable, together with everyone who posted questions on Slido. Thank you once again for your attention, and I will now leave the word to Fausto.
Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you.
The time is up. I don't want to take too much time. I just want to thank everyone who was involved. Her Excellency, the Madam Ambassador, FER's Dean, all the panelists and speakers, Nicola moderating, all the organizers from FER and the Embassy of Portugal. This was joint work that involved many people, that some of them you see here. And of course, all the attendees that are here and at home. Thank you, everyone, and see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you, Pedro.